I've seen, many posts that are on Facebook, and some have already made the transition into thinking that the effects of the whole pandemic is the new normal. I mean, you see some Facebook posts saying that, you can't go back to the old way of doing things. You got to accept the change, that's happening. And, I can concur to a point in that maybe this pandemic has changed the way you have been living. Maybe for the longest time, work has become the priority, not only over God but your family. So you know you had the time off to spend with your family. And maybe spiritually, you didn't have time with God. You didn't have time spent with him because you were working. And so your spiritual life has plummeted to where, you really haven't been with God. You haven't spent time with him. And so, this pandemic has more or less given you the time to spend with God to get back to where you needed to be. And, these are the positives that I see that has come from this pandemic. And also the stimulus money that, you know, people have gotten. That's a blessing as well because, if you can't work, you need money to be able to pay bills. You need money for food and stuff like that. So these are the positives that I see. But as this pandemic had went on, you know, there have been a lot of red flags, and many of them point to our rights as United States citizens being taken away. I've seen some videos of, if you don't, stay in your place and obey what they're saying, to stop this pandemic, then you're going to be cited and imprisoned. And around this time, they're they because of the pandemic, they're freeing prisoners, but then they want to arrest people who are not obeying, what they're saying, and treat them like criminals. And that's what that, I believe it was the mayor of Chicago, that is what she had said. And just seeing that, something is wrong. Something is wrong when you can't go into a store without a mask on and having the freedom of not wearing a mask. You don't have that. And if you were to go into a store without one on, they will more or less kick you out and they'll call the authorities. I remember, when this pandemic started, that I went into Walmart, everyone was wearing a mask, and this one gentleman, didn't have one on. And the worker there, she was like, "Sir, don't make me call the authorities. Get your mask on," and stuff like that. And so, you know, I've heard from two different doctors, these two doctors that say, you know, it's the sick that need to be quarantined, not the healthy. And of course, information about them has been taken off YouTube. Anything that is contrary thinking to what they want you to think, it is taken down. And I understand. I don't understand whatsoever the logic with that. I mean, it's like getting into a debate with somebody, and the other side is refusing to hear what you have to say. So immediately they cut out, the conversation, they cut out the debate, and say that their thinking is the thinking that you must have. So therefore, it takes the freedom of thought away. And then having the freedom of speech. I mean, with this pandemic, more or less our rights have been touched on. We don't have the freedom to assemble. We don't have the freedom of, basically speaking. And this pandemic has really showed it. And a lot of people have fought that. A lot of people, cannot work, and that, what are they supposed to do if they're stuck in their houses? And where I'm living, a lot of people are fighting it. And a lot of people are protesting. And, that really reminds me of the quote from Thomas Jefferson, that when people fear the government, there is tyranny. And the complete opposite of what he's saying has to happen, to where, it should be the other way around. That's what freedom is not having the government take away your rights. So basically the whole point of this video and the topic is this the new normal? And so, like I had already said, we had already seen the positives of the pandemic. But, like I already mentioned, that, the negative of this is that it is more than masks. It is more than social distancing. It's the taking away of our rights and the freedom that we have. And what really doesn't make sense is that if you fight against your rights being taken away, you're called uncaring because you're not obeying the orders of staying inside because you don't care about your fellow man. And like those two doctors have said, I'm not going to mention their names or anything, but it is the sick that are to be quarantined, not the healthy. So currently we have a cure to this pandemic. People that have taken it, I heard from within 5 hours that those symptoms are gone. They can breathe better and they don't have a high fever. And they can't go, a lot of people can't go to get prescriptions for the medicine that they need because, a lot of physicians are siding more or less with the government, saying that, you can't take this kind of medicine because it is not a good combination. It's dangerous. Well, it can't be too dangerous if it's healing people that are taking it. And I've heard of, because people haven't been taking it, that there have been deaths, a lot in New York City. And I'm really not going to get into, the posts that I've read, the information that I've read, but I'll just say that there have been a lot of needless deaths due to the fact that the medication that has been needed wasn't administered to. It wasn't given to these people. And of course, this is all outside the realm of God and what God can do. God can heal somebody with, this, this sickness. And I know of a brother that prayed for somebody with it, and they were healed. The temperature was taken, their temperature went down, and they were better. So God can do all things. But I'm talking about somebody that is of the world, and their eyes are on the world, and their eyes are on fear, the fear of the circumstance. So they're not going to have God in mind. So like I said, we have a cure to this virus, but it has been denied, and there have been so many needless deaths. And I agree with the two doctors that have spoken about this pandemic. They said, yeah, the lockdown was a smart thing to do, because if you're unsure about something, then yeah, keep the people quarantined. But then they said But we have done our research. We have researched thousands of people, and they, more or less, those people have been given the medication that they needed, and they've been healed. And so they have done their research, and their research has pointed to the fact that this is just something that's a little more worse than the flu, but a lot of people have been taken care of by themselves, getting over the sickness or whatever. And they said that this whole quarantine, people sanitizing their hands all the time, sanitizing their place, it takes away the bacteria. So what does that do? Our immune systems then go down because we don't have any bacteria that our bodies are fighting. So he said, when you do that, then once this pandemic ends, a lot of people are going to be sick because they have spent time indoors and their immune systems can't fight the bacteria. What really comes to mind is that movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise. And, apparently the aliens thought that they were above us and they could conquer us. But something that they didn't understand, something that they didn't have, was, the immunity to sickness. What killed them was bacteria. And so that is something that they didn't, account for. And that's why all of them died. And it showed at the end of it, what our immune systems can do, and how our bodies can fight, any kind of sickness. So more or less, mainstream media is painting a really dark picture. They're overblowing information. They've taken it out of proportion to get people to be afraid. And of course, I know that more or less it's for the purpose of continuing this pandemic until the election, because they don't want Donald Trump to get reelected. So, I don't want to really create this video as a political kind of thing, but like I've said in plenty of other videos, that it's more than political. It's starting to dip into not only our rights, but morality. It's not just a simple Republican versus Democrat. It is morality. It is darkness that we are fighting. And our flesh, our fight isn't against flesh and blood. It's against principalities and powers of the air. And that is what is controlling a lot of people that are in the government. A lot of people that are evil, that are okay with abortion, that are okay with killing innocent babies, that are okay with you molesting children and abusing them and killing them. Like I have read, and many videos that I have seen, and testimonies from people who have been abused. So basically, my question is, are you willing to accept this as the new normal? Basically, what other rights will they try to take away from you that you would be okay with? How many people are just going to let it happen, because you want to obey? And it says in Scripture that we are to obey the laws, but not when those laws are God-given. Not when those laws go against God's laws. Apparently in the 60s and before, I don't know whether people had this kind of law that it was okay to treat our black brothers and sisters, like they were not human. And they are human. It's the most ridiculous kind of thinking that anybody could ever have. Of course they're human. They just look different. Like any other race. We look different than the Chinese race. We look different than the black race. And I'm speaking of Caucasians. But they are brothers and sisters. So it's the most ridiculous kind of thinking that anybody could have ever had, that would even be an issue at that time. So with this going on, I've seen, Facebook posts about, these different decorated masks as if this is something that people need to get used to. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to get used to it. If this is pushed any further, then there's going to be retaliation. Not a, a, not a fight in the physical sense, but in standing up for our rights, there's going to be a fight in that way. I once seen a video of this lady that was arrested for breaking social distancing rules. There is an agenda behind the scenes that is at work that is taking away our liberty. And we as U.S. citizens need to know what our rights are. And once we know our rights are, we can see what's being trampled on. And this is something that we cannot allow. So, in closing, I refuse on these grounds to accept this as the new normal. Yeah, this pandemic brought us closer to God. Yeah, it brought us closer to our family. And we've seen, the blessing of the stimulus. But then we've also seen the negatives that have come from this pandemic and what all these negatives are pointing to. So it's not a good thing. It's not about a pandemic. It is about control. It's about us being controlled. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I pray that you aren't seeing this as a new normal, that you have to get used to it, because we shouldn't ever get used to the fact that our rights are being taken away. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for taking the time to watch.